back to Beyond the Hedges. I'm your host, David Mansuri, and today we're diving deep into the world of cutting-edge innovation, venture creation, and the rapidly shifting landscape of artificial intelligence. Joining us is Rice alumnus and managing director of Techstars Boulder, Dr. Shay Har-Noy. Shay has spent his career at the forefront of space technology, geospatial data, and AI-driven enterprises, helping to scale complex deep tech solutions from early-stage concepts to global market leaders. Today, we're going to talk about what it actually takes to build a company in the current economic climate, how to separate true artificial intelligence value from the media hype, and what the future holds for the next generation of tech entrepreneurs. Shay, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, David. It's an honor.
All right, so just to start off, Shay, you spent your career at the intersection of a lot of interesting industries and technologies, from geospatial intelligence to space technology. And so I want to ask you maybe first, what initially drew you into the deep tech space? And how has your perspective on what deep tech even means and what it looks like, how has that evolved over the years?
Well, I'd have to give a hat tip to one of my faculty members, Rich Bernick. I remember walking with him in Duncan Hall senior year and deciding I was just going to go work in industry for a little while. He gave me a really hard time. He said, Shay, you need to apply to graduate school. You need to keep nurturing your curiosity. He didn't say in those words. I think there was a little bit more poignant than that. But that led me to get my Ph.D. and to be able to go really deep on a topic that ultimately nobody ends up caring about, but it builds the skills in being able to learn a lot and have the confidence to be able to unravel whatever you place your mind to. It's a little bit cliche, but I remember when I first went to graduate school, I was a little bit of imposter syndrome. Oh, everybody's so smart, international students and Ph.D. programs. And I remember the first paper I got, I had a really hard time reading through it. Really hard time reading through the academic literature. It was so dense. And by the end of my PhD, I was flying through 7, 8, 9 papers a day. Just being able to get the gist of it, being able to parse the information, understand what the results, what the methods are, what the conclusions are, and really flying through this body of research. And I take that with me today. So you ask what led me to pursue kind of these deep tech innovations. It's just understanding and having confidence that I can. There's this cliche. It says when you finish your undergrad, you think you know everything. You finish your master's, you realize you know nothing. When you finish your PhD, you realize nobody knows anything. And I try to take that to heart, right?
Yeah.
This stuff looks hard.
Yeah.
I'm wrapping my head around quantum computing now,
Yeah.
right? And I realize nobody knows anything. It's great, right? And it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's not. It's being able to explore new domains with confidence.
And so walk us through your career kind of journey, right? So you talked about that senior year conversation at Rice and then going to graduate school. And then how did you go from there to the work that you're doing today, helping entrepreneurs and sort of leaders start new things?
Yeah, so I think a big part of it was just seeking the more adventurous path. So it was around my last year of graduate school. One of my buddies went traveling in Asia, found his way to Mongolia, came back smitten with the mysteries of Genghis Khan's tomb. So Genghis Khan died in 1227. For the last 800 years, his tomb has been missing. Who better to find the tomb of Genghis Khan, to uncover this ancient mystery, than a bunch of bozos in San Diego who know how to carry a heavy backpack up a hill? So we start from the academic literature. We figured out what tools and technologies, satellites, drones, LiDAR, ground penetrating radar, all these fancy technologies can be applied to solve this 800-year-old mystery. And so summer 2009, 2010, 2011, under the sponsorship of National Geographic, we were in Mongolia searching for the tomb of Genghis Khan.
That's cool. Wow.
We were, at that point, at that moment in time, we were probably the world's experts in Mongolian archaeology and Mongolian history.
Mm, mm,
Really cool,
mm,
right? Not an archaeologist,
mm,
not a historian, not particularly wise about the ancient ways of the Mongolian Empire. But nonetheless, at that moment, because we learned so much about it,
mm,
myself personally, I was a personal expert on detecting clues from satellite imagery, probably more than any person in the world, right? What's it useful for? The task at hand, right? And understanding what the state of the art is. When we came back from Mongolia, summer 2010, we kind of had a brainstorm. Hey, this stuff that we figured out, it's not that dumb. I wonder if there's other applications we can apply it to. Maybe we can build a company around this. So we incorporated a company called Tomnod, which means big eye in Mongolian. I was the CEO of it. And we leveraged the technology that we built and some of the ideas that we came up with and kind of productionized them to comb through vast quantities of satellite imagery. And so we sold to insurance companies, to the Navy. We partnered with one of the premier we partnered with one of the premier commercial satellite image providers, DigitalGlobe and GeoEye at the time. And we built our business that way. And after 3 years, we ended up getting acquired by DigitalGlobe, by that commercial satellite image company. And that's what brought me here to Colorado, to Boulder, where at first, my first task at the acquiring company was to make sure their acquisition made sense and that it had legs and that it integrated into the company. They're like, "Oh, Shai, this is working really well. We have 20 AI scientists." At the time, AI was using different methods, classical methods like SVMs and traditional classifiers. So I got to oversee that entire group and all those investments. That worked really well as we got onto the CNN, the deep learning bandwagon. And then it was, hey, can you take over all of web distribution? And so I took over web distribution. I led Digital Globe's movement from their on-prem tape storage to the cloud, allowing people to deploy AI models against the imagery right there in the cloud. And so it was kind of a slippery slope of taking on more responsibility, more ownership, but also learning more, being open to learning, right? I wasn't a cloud computing expert, but by the end of it, I was pretty smart about it. I remember our company and my group were the first customer of AWS's, I think they called it Snowmobile. It's where they bring an 18-wheeler and park it in front of your data center with a giant pipe. Because turns out that the fastest bit rate you can get is an 18-wheeler when you're moving vast quantities of data. So I'm going to pause right there. That was kind of like the launch of my career
yeah,
in terms of learning about AI, learning about petabytes of imagery,
yeah,
computer vision problems, and that's led me into where I am today.
yeah. And so then tell me a little bit about like what's your work today? What's the focus of Techstars? What do you do? What are you doing day to day in your job today?
So I have the coolest job right now. I have one of the coolest jobs I think in America. So Techstars Boulder was the original Techstars, one of the original accelerators in the country. It started in 2007 and it grew to become an international phenomenon.
Mm.
And I'm responsible for rebuilding it here in Boulder. And so that means raising a fund. So talking to business leaders from around the state, around the country, around the world, getting them to become LPs in the fund. But more importantly, it's reaching out to entrepreneurs. So we just closed applications last week for our September cohort, and we received over 1,400 applications for 10 slots. 1,400 applications. And behind each one of these companies is a passionate entrepreneur or a passionate founding team ready to run through walls to make their vision a reality. It's pretty rad. Even the ones that aren't going to be Techstars companies, and most of them won't be, right? So
Yeah.
it's a pretty low acceptance rate.
Mm.
I wish them and I try to encourage and I try to help them as much as I can to find their success, to find their path.
Mm.
I have a lot of thoughts about what it takes to start a company today.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing, I've read through 600 or so applications in
Yeah.
the last 4 days. This is all really fresh and seeing a lot of common themes behind some really talented people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I want to talk, I definitely want to talk about what you're seeing in the entrepreneur kind of ecosystem and lessons you've learned in that space. I want to ask maybe one or two other kind of framing questions around the different aspects of your career and how that sort of informs the perspective that you're taking. But one thing I want to ask, just as kind of a layperson in this work, for our listeners who may not be in the tech trenches every day, could you tell us what does deep tech actually mean? What is that? What is deep tech? And then you mentioned artificial intelligence, how are deep tech companies broadly thinking about artificial intelligence and the intersection of deep tech? Like, what does that look like right now in a time where, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence?
So I'm not going to read the definition of deep tech, but I think it's widely used as companies that are solving hard technical problems
Mm,
where the moat, meaning the moat that allows it to succeed long term as a business, is the IP, is the technical innovation. So naturally, a lot of spinouts from universities, from Rice, from
mm,
CU Boulder, from
yeah,
various universities around the country, are largely based on academic research and where they can go build a product and build a company around that. And there's challenges in doing that, but there's also like this really interesting level of support you can give these companies. And I'm seeing top universities really leaning in to try to commercialize that research. And historically, the commercialization office has been just, hey, let's create an invention, let's patent it, and let's try to get somebody else to build it.
yeah,
Let's try to get IBM to pay for it,
yeah,
right? Or somebody big and license our patents. And that's valid. That's interesting. But now what we're seeing is a lot of people building companies specifically around that IP, those patents. And so that's kind of one of the trends I'm seeing on deep tech,
interesting. Yeah.
where people are able to build around a technical moat that they've established.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And then one last question about your kind of background. So you talked about the work that the sort of various things that you've done professionally and how they sort of one led to the others. Really fascinating professional set of experiences. And I want to ask you specifically. You had some early experiences with data sets that I'm imagining are shaping the way that you view or thinking about the Gen AI explosion that we're seeing right now, and would love for you to talk about that. Like, how have the experiences that you've had professionally informed the way you think about this moment we're in around AI?
So there's a couple of things around AI. There's one is being able to do things more efficiently than we used to be able to do before. And two, it's doing things that we weren't able to do before. So it's kind of two different things. So detecting new gene sequences, that's something we couldn't do before. Building a software app and launching a software business in a week with no technical background is something we could have done before,
Hmm.
but was just really hard. It was like
Yeah,
hard. You could
yeah,
have written your code, right? You
yeah,
took computer science class at Rice, right? You know
yeah.
how to do that.
Mm.
Or you could take a Coursera and figure it out. These are two different things. And so what we're seeing is a lot of businesses are building prototypes or even MVPs, minimum viable products,
Yeah.
to be able to go to market
Mm.
with a lot fewer resources. So even at Techstars, it used to be a really good signal because these are early stage companies we're investing in. But it used to be a really good signal when a company had a prototype, when a company had a product, when you could push the buttons and you could show it to customers and maybe you had a few of them on there, right? That was a really good signal that this team is smart, they know what they're building, and they can execute, right? Really good early stage signal. Today, it's a given, right? If you're passionate about this thing, why didn't you build a prototype?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't go to computer science. Nobody cares,
Mm.
right? Like you should. So it's less of a signal, and which confuses us, right? As far as our metrics and as far as our selection, but it also doesn't. It means that companies show up with a lot more traction. It means like, hey, I built this. And I've showed it to 7 of my friends, 2 of my cousins, and I managed to sell it to 3 strangers. Right? Now I'm ready to scale a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's actually, what talking about my applications, one of the biggest mistakes I see are people that are really proud of the fact that they built something really quickly. So I'll see a lot. I built this app
Yeah.
myself in 3 weeks with no technical training.
Yeah.
What they're trying what they're trying to say is I'm really talented about this in this space or in building stuff.
Mm.
But what I'm actually hearing is maybe it's not that hard to build this thing. What I'd rather have you say is, my name's Luigi, me and my brother Mario and sister Princess grew up in a plumber family, and now we're selling this amazing tool to improve the efficiency of plumbers around the world. Right? Why? What brought you to this place at this moment? And it's not, I spent the last 3 weeks messing with Claude.
Yeah.
So that's on the AI side on
Yeah.
building new businesses. On the deep learning side, we're seeing people being able to leverage AI to move much more quickly. And so again, we have an IP, right? We have some innovation, some new chemistry, some new patents, some new materials, some new innovation around aerospace or data processing or whatever it is, right?
Mm.
But that's not enough to build a product,
Yeah.
right? Nobody wants to buy your patent,
Mm.
right? How do you build something that's useful for someone? And to that extent, because that cost has gone down, you're able to have this nugget of gold, right? This nugget of like hardcore science. And the wrapper around it that makes it usable is is much cheaper to build, much quicker to build. You can now iterate. It has a lot less risk. And I think ultimately it leads to better outcomes, higher chances of success for deep tech
Yeah.
companies, and ultimately, better contribution back to the university,
Yeah.
back to the founders, back to the
Mm.
investors, et
Mm.
cetera.
So you talked about, it's very interesting. You talked about how a bit about how you're seeing AI change the work of early stage startups and how founders are thinking about those tools. I'm also curious about what that looks like from a investor perspective. Obviously, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast is
Yeah.
hearing this kind of narrative around, we're either in this kind of unprecedented AI super cycle, and the opportunity for growth and investment is essentially unlimited, versus another narrative that this is overhyped, and there's a lot of kind of valuation bubble rhetoric that you also hear. And so as someone who's in this work every
Yeah.
day, what does the actual entrepreneurial climate look like on the ground right now for founders who are trying to raise capital? What are they hearing from
Yeah.
investors? How are you thinking about that as someone who's helping founders?
David, this is the crux, and I think it's really interesting. It has never been a better time to build a company than today. There has
Mm.
never been a better time to build a company than today. You can do so much more with so much less and really de-risk your business. Not just de-risk the product, but de-risk your entire business. For investors and for companies seeking investment, one of my most common conversations I have is why?
Mm.
Why?
Yeah.
Don't raise money because TechCrunch tells you to,
Yeah.
right? Because you watched Social Network and you want to be like somebody on TV, right? Be so passionate about your value proposition, about your
Yeah.
customer. And if you keep them in focus, raising venture may not be the right thing to do. So I say it's never been a better time to
Yeah.
to start a company, but not necessarily a venture backed company.
Mm.
And so remember we talked about our plumber example, right? The three siblings. Did you get the Mario Brothers reference there?
Yes.
Was that hilarious or what? Some good
Thanks
dad
for
jokes.
clarifying, just in case anybody
I
didn't
just
get it.
want to
Yeah,
make sure
that's
nobody
good.
missed that because I
Yeah.
thought I
Yeah.
was pretty
Yeah.
clever right
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're passionate about solving problems for the services industry, for the plumbing community, right, and drive a lot of value, go do it. Go sell it. Go build a 1, 2, 5, $10 million business. VCs and VC returns require a path for it to be $100 million business,
Mm.
right? But for the three siblings, building a $10 million cash flowing
Yeah.
business, that's freaking awesome. You
Yeah.
should do that. I
Yeah.
almost expect you to build a side hustle, right? And reluctantly go raise capital. Okay. And so when I'm when I'm evaluating companies, I'm not saying, is this a smart idea or will this be a successful business? So many companies that I'm saying no to are great businesses, but they still might not be for me, right? And I want the entrepreneur to be successful. I'm not saying, oh, you should pivot to do something else and take on this bigger risk. No, no, do what you're doing. You're awesome. And I want to help you. But at the same time, I need to be really crisp on how do you build invested businesses that have a long-term trajectory to reach 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, $1 billion in revenues, right?
Mm,
And not every business can achieve that, nor should they.
mm,
Right? It's riskier shooting for a billion than it is
sure.
having kind of a more predictable route to that
Yeah.
10 million, 5 million.
Yeah.
And so specific things that I'm looking for are probably one of a few things. One, does this product get smarter the more it gets usage? Like, are you collecting some sort of data or insight that builds a moat that's not like a generic software ease of
Yeah.
using?
Yep.
Two, is there any specific integrations that are hard, that are annoying, but that allows you to build access to customer data that's hard to replicate or hard to do on a shallow basis? Three, is there a regulatory or compliance mode that requires you to be really smart, distinct, and have the longevity of a business? But what I don't want is I don't want Claude to put out the next feature and totally wipe you out. So
Right.
software alone is not
Yeah.
going to do it. You might still build a great business, David. You might still build a
Yeah.
$5 million business, which is rad,
Yeah.
right? You can put your kids through college many times over doing that, right?
Mm,
But at the same time, to build that, hey, over the next 10 years, we're going to get to $1 billion in sales, right? It needs to have something a little bit more, a little
yep.
bit deeper, a
Mm,
little bit keener insight into the customer data, into the industry data, get smarter as it's used, knowing how to compare between users within privacy limitations, things like that. And not every business is well suited to doing that, and that's okay, right? Um,
yeah. Awesome. Okay. I want to ask a question. Is really something that I'm just interested in and passionate about, and folks who have listened to previous episodes of the series here have heard me ask similar questions, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it. So I'm really interested, Shai, in understanding how the skills and competencies that young people need to be building is changing or not changing given the accelerated use of artificial intelligence and what that means for companies and what that means for folks who want to start companies. And so I'd be interested in what you're seeing on that front. What kinds of talent are founders looking for? What kinds of talent are they not looking for? How have you seen that change over time? And then any thoughts you might have on what that means for colleges or high schools who are thinking about preparing the next generation of tech workers or founders or entrepreneurs who want to build, interesting things.
so I would say curiosity.
Mm,
If you talk to some of the more established older people in the tech industry, a lot of them didn't study computer science or engineering. If you went to college in 1960, that wasn't really the path that you might take,
right.
right? You studied like history, but you tinkered and you messed with resistors and you wrote code and you bought the latest computer at Radio Shack, right?
Mm,
It was a tinkerer's paradise. And the leaders of Sand Hill Road, of the venture capital industry, of Hewlett Packard, of Intel, of all these amazing companies came from the tinkering mindset.
mm,
Okay, not rigorous
yeah. Yeah.
academic
Mm,
development.
yeah.
It's kind of the same thing now.
Mm,
Right? Of course, if you studied computer architecture, you'll know how to build like a more stable system in a
sure.
cloud deployed environment. That's not what we're talking about. But you can be a pretty effective tinkerer
Mm,
while studying history or sociology or learning about business and learning about economics and learning about these things that make you more well-rounded. As long as we continue to nurture that curiosity. And so for somebody who's hiring, I'm more interested in seeing their GitHub repo. And it's like, oh, You haven't built an app? Why? I want to see you. You're in a pickleball. I want to see you build a scheduling app for your
Huh.
local pickleball court,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I've never actually played pickleball, but you get the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Right? And if not, then why not?
Mm,
Why haven't you gone over the hurdle to tinker? Because
mm,
we're going to be doing a lot of tinkering at this company,
mm.
right? And if you're not able to motivate yourself to figure it out on your own, then maybe it's not a great fit. And so I think for universities, it's really important to nurture that level of creativity. And I don't know what that looks like, but it's not just in the engineering. It's not just in Duncan Hall,
Right.
right? It's across campus. It's at
Yeah.
the music school,
Yeah.
right? I have probably 6 applicants to my accelerator, to the next cohort that have some variation of a music learning app
Interesting.
or something.
Huh.
I'm not saying that they're great businesses,
Sure.
right,
Sure.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
accessible, but it's people who have a class are classically trained
Yeah.
in certain instruments or in composition,
Yeah.
right? And are taking that passion and building something that they can
Yeah.
impact the world with.
Yeah.
And we're
That's
seeing a
awesome.
lot of that.
That's great. Okay, a couple more questions, Shy, and then we'll move to our lightning round here as we get towards the back half of our conversation. But one of the things I've been thinking a lot about too in the kind of AI space is, and I'm sure that you've heard of this, the kind of concept that Ethan Mollick has put forward around the kind of jagged edge of AI and understanding what things can it do, what things can it not do, and I'm interested in how you advise founders, whether it's in the deep tech space or other
Mm.
spaces, around how to think about what AI, what LLMs, what other tools can do when building their companies, and how to learn what it can't do too. How do you advise founders when they're trying to figure that out?
Yeah, so I think you need to look at the risk of the business. If you're
Mm,
building a software product, the risk is not, can this software be written,
mm,
right? I think, and the risk is not, can you make this thing scale and not crash? That's necessary, but not sufficient. The risk is, does anybody care about it? The risk is anybody willing to pay for it? The risk is, what is the CAC and LTV? The CAC is the cost of acquiring customers.
mm,
And if you can use AI naively even to de-risk the real risks of the business, that's fantastic. Of course, if you get 100,000 users, you can't like have them all on a lovable app that's running on your computer. Of course, duh, right? There's a lot of value in rigorous engineering, pen testing, and all these things that we've been building as far as the infrastructure and the state of the art in the domain. Of course, right? But the challenge is, how do you de-risk the critical parts of the business? And so if you're able to measure your cost of acquiring customers, you're able to get people to pay and convert, you have a good understanding of your metrics and economics, I can help you build something that's scalable that won't fall over when it gets at its peak load every day.
yeah.
The problem has been solved and we can solve it again.
Mm,
And so, as for business owners, I think that's one of the advantages that they can bring is the focus on the customer, the user, and the value that they're bringing up. And so when we talk about jagged edge of I think it's amazing to build first. It's amazing to build MVPs, to build prototypes, to iterate really quickly on features and seeing which one people use, which stuff people use. It's going to keep getting better. It's going to keep getting better and more stable and write more consistent code. Absolutely. But right now we're seeing the people that are able to build with it have technical expertise and knowing how to build systems that don't fall over.
yeah. Interesting. And then I'm curious, are there founders or technologies or companies, Shy, right now that you're really excited about? I'd be curious about whether there are 2 to 3, examples that you could share that folks might be interested in hearing more about that are on your radar. It could be folks you're supporting or
Yeah.
or folks that you just think are building something really, really interesting right now.
It's tricky for me to talk about specific companies that have applied to the accelerator because it's a little.
Or maybe ones that haven't. I don't know. It
Yeah,
just could be people that are building interesting things or companies that are doing
absolutely.
interesting work right
So
now.
I can talk about interesting spaces that I'm
Yeah, great.
seeing. One is around AI governance and compliance.
Mm,
And so you saw the CTO of Uber and Dara say, "Hey, these agents are costing us a ton." And so at first there was the rush to force their engineering staff to take on the use of AI.
yeah,
And all of a sudden this is getting really expensive. And I think they burned through their annual budget in the first quarter of this year. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting. It's not just use as many tokens as you can.
yeah,
It's how do you drive it to business
yeah,
outcomes,
yeah. Right.
right? Just because you can build a feature doesn't mean you should.
Yeah,
And so being really deliberate around what you're building, how you're using it, because it's not free and it's useful. If it can be really powerful and
yeah,
increase your velocity,
yep,
you still need to be rigorous around it. So I'm seeing an entire space around AI compliance where making sure the costs don't overrun, make sure that it has
yeah.
translatable
Interesting.
productive outcomes.
Yep.
And I'm seeing it for different domains, for healthcare with HIPAA, for
Yeah,
financial services, for general cost mitigation, for security, for ITAR. I'm seeing so many different flavors of that. Not
yeah,
so many. I'm seeing a lot of increased interest in it
yeah,
across different domains.
yeah,
I think that's showing the signs of the times that, hey, we're getting beyond just tinkering on our desktops, or we're building production code with it. And so now we want a little bit of safeguards.
yeah.
There was a company earlier in the year that the agent deleted their entire code database
Hmm.
because it had permissions.
Yeah,
It had permissions. It decided that it would be more efficient to start from a clean slate than to mess
yeah.
with somebody
Interesting.
else's code, than
Yeah,
to learn it and then mess with it.
yeah,
Fine, not unreasonable, but the way it went about it was just deleting it.
yeah. Interesting. Hmm. Okay, and then Shai. So, did you find the tomb?
You need to watch the documentary, David. We found some really intriguing clues in the Burkhan Khaldun, which is in northern Mongolia on the border with Siberia, that indicate the presence of an ancient civilization. But to get the details, you need to watch the documentary. It's called The Lost Tomb of Genghis Khan. It's on Nat Geo TV and on Lufthansa flights going eastbound. At least I get text about that when people land the plane.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, great. I'll add that to my watch list.
right on.
That's awesome. Okay, all right. Shai, we ask 3 questions at the end of every interview. It's kind of a rapid fire segment here, and I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. First, what's your favorite spot on the Rice campus?
50-yard line in the stadium on the
Okay,
AstroTurf, running sprints on the AstroTurf.
there we go. All right, that's great. Okay, what's the best book that you've read recently?
I read the Elon Musk biography recently,
Mm,
and it's a little bit of an older title, but the level of confidence they have in themselves is inspiring.
mm.
He's now a little bit controversial in different domains, but this notion of believing in yourself. Hey, if I lose all my money, that's cool. I'm good at making money. I could do it again.
Yeah.
And that's really inspiring. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a little bit of that. And
Mm.
seeing them, I would encourage a lot of Rice grads to believe in themselves and what they're capable of.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. And then last question. So, as you know, when students apply to Rice, they're presented with the box. And, where you put an image of something you care about
Fill the box to
or
the right with
graphic
something that
or
appeals to you.
yeah, exactly. And
Now is the
so,
title.
what did you put in your
Yeah,
box? What would you put in your box? Yeah. Tell us about
I love that.
Dr. Shay Har-Noy's box on that application.
Still conveying my imposter syndrome. I think the box is the only reason why I got in. In the box, I was the last year of a paper application, and I went to Radio Shack and I bought an old photo frame, or one of these recordable photo frames that you can put your photo and leave a recording for grandma.
Yeah.
And I took it apart, got the circuit board,
Hmm.
and left a recording to the admissions committee and taped the button on there. And I said, push here. And it was in my voice with some sort of Rice song in the background that
Huh.
I downloaded on Napster. And I left a message. And I remember that because before I graduated, I went to the registrar's office and she pulled my file And in there was my application, and it started playing. I was like, it still works. That's fantastic. But that was a really unique feature of the Rice application that I always connected with, and I
That's
think that it really
awesome.
had an impact on me.
That's great. That's great. Shai, this has been an awesome conversation. I've learned a ton. Thanks for your insights and perspective, important work you're doing to launch companies and support entrepreneurs that are changing the world. Really enjoyed the conversation and just also want to say to our listeners, really appreciate you tuning in today and just would encourage folks to subscribe to Beyond the Hedges wherever you go and get your podcasts. Follow us on social media and leave us a review. And Shai, thanks again for your time. And we'll look forward to seeing folks again next time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.